going to take a look at what all 32 teams still kind of need to do, a move they still need to make. But we're not going to do all 32 teams today. We are only going to do the NFC. And we're going to start off with your least favorite division, the NFC West. I don't actually know if that's your least favorite division. And let's go straight to the defending NFC champion, San Francisco 49ers. Very talented roster, obviously. They made it to the Super Bowl, but they still fell short. So, dudes, what do you think this team still needs to do to kind of get over the hump?
Well, first and foremost, Brandon Ayuk needs to be signed to an extension. Let's preface by saying that sometimes the most important thing a team can do is take care of their own guys, right? So I think I want to put that out there first. I think Brandon Ayuk has become the true number one receiver on that team. And so I had a lot of cryptic messages on social media in regards to what, their GM has said. So we'll see what happens with that marriage going forward. But when you look at this team, like, not a lot of holes, right? And I think that's why a lot of people picked them last year to win the Super Bowl, and why I think they're still debating odd favorites. And maybe, Breach, you can look that up and tell me. I think they were the favorites to win it this year too, as well, because when you look at their team in totality, there's Pro Bowlers up and down the roster. But when you look at the team, I think they need more depth at the offensive tackle position. Yes, they extended Colton McKivitz on a one-year deal, but this is a heavy tackle draft, right? You can get your tackle of the future. I think they look at that position, and then corner, right? You need somebody at the corner position. Now, they did sign Isaac Yiadom, who I think is a really good player that can play in the slot as well, but I think they still need a corner on the outside to really help solidify this defense. Love what they did with Devondre Campbell, bringing him over. Also, Leonard Floyd, that was a need, especially because Chase Young won't be there this year, and Malik Collins trading for him after they lost Eric Armstead. But to me, the most important things going into the draft, offensive tackle depth and corner, is what the 49ers need to attack.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You mentioned the Super Bowl odds. They are plus 500 right now, which is they're the favorite. They are the favorite.
It's just crazy that people are still doubting Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it seems like now's the time to get good value for Patrick Mahomes, since they're second at plus 650. And it's just how many Super Bowls in a row does Patrick Mahomes have to win before they label him the favorite?
Goodness. The funny thing is, we were doing the post-game show. I believe it was me, Musso, and Danny Cannell. And the odds came out right after the Super Bowl. And I was like, the Chiefs got to be favorite, right? They were like, actually, no, it's the 49ers. And I'm like, what else does Patrick Money Mahomes have to do to earn the respect of Vegas? Or is this a ploy to get people to throw that money down on San Francisco, thinking, you know what, third time's the charm. Maybe they'll finally get over the hump.
That's what it feels like. They want them to throw their money away on the 49ers. And, the Ayuk stuff is interesting because we kind of saw it with Deebo Samuel. He was disgruntled. He wasn't happy with how things were going in San Francisco. They finally gave him his extension. And just to kind of have, it does feel like there's at least a little bit of bad blood between Ayuk and the organization, because you have John Lynch saying, hey, everything's all right. We want to keep them. And then you mentioned the emojis. They were not friendly emojis. One of them was the poop emoji, which, when you're using that to describe your general manager or describe the situation, that's not a good thing. And it was him basically saying they need to put their money where their mouth is and show me the money. So I think that is something you don't want to have that drama hanging over your head when you get to training camp. So I definitely think that is one thing they need to get taken care of. And you mentioned the tackle situation, specifically right tackle. That is where you got to get fixed, because we all know they have one of the best left tackles in football in Trent Williams. And, if you're the 49ers, that probably is the advantage of picking so low in the draft, having the 31st pick, is that you could find a right tackle there, or as you mentioned, corner. So, yeah, it does seem like tackle, corner are their two needs, but they can fix them in the draft. So let's go on to the Los Angeles Rams. We all know what happened with them this offseason. One of the craziest, just out of nowhere, Aaron Donald announces his retirement. So it feels like maybe something along the defensive line could be their biggest remaining need. What do you think it is, Deuce?
Without a doubt. Now, it's hard to replace one player with what Aaron Donald has done and meant for the Los Angeles Rams. It's impossible. I think Sean McVay even came out and said you can't replace him with one person. You hope that the totality of the defense can pick things up, right? Some of these younger players that they've really, banked on, Ernest Jones and a guy like Kobe Turner, Byron Young, hopefully they can go and pick up the slack for Aaron Donald not being there. But you look at that, A guy, Byron Murphy, makes a lot of sense. I think they pick number 19. Again, you don't expect him to be Aaron Donald, but he has some of those features that Aaron Donald has as far as the quick twitch, right? The explosive ability, the internal pass rush, which quarterbacks really hate. And I think edge too. Byron Young was a surprise for a lot of people last year. I believe he had 8.5 sacks. You need to pair somebody with him on the opposite side. Now they did sign Darius Williams, who was a Ram before and went to Jacksonville, and Tre'Davious White, and we'll see where he is injury-wise. So corner was another need for this team, but they've kind of handled that in free agency. I think the biggest need right now is, like you said, Breach, on the defensive line, D tackle and edge, because they threw a boatload of money, Breach, at that interior offensive line. So that offensive line is locked and loaded. The defensive line is where they need help.
Yeah, and absolutely they need to do something there. You mentioned Kobe Turner. I think that, look, Puka Nacua is probably kind of the rookie that stole the show that everyone heard about in LA, but just Kobe Turner had such a great year and kind of got overshadowed because Puka played so well. But yeah, they've got to do something with the pass rush. And you know, the weird thing though is, and you mentioned Byron Murphy, they actually have a chance to get him because for the first time in Sean McVay's career, he has a first-round pick. He's never had one before. He has no idea what's going on. He's like, I have to watch the draft on Thursday, or I have to pay attention to what's going on. So, yeah, I think that absolutely they have a shot at Byron Murphy. I think another good defensive tackle in there. Johnny Newton, which I only know because I did my Bengals mock draft this week and was looking at maybe some of the top defensive tackle prospects. So, yeah, definitely I do think that it really is that defensive front right there that they need to improve on. But they have a pretty solid roster, don't you think?
Yeah, and the great thing about what Les Snead and Sean McVay have done, right, they've done a really good job developing some of those draft picks that you talked about, because for the longest, they were a team that says, forget that first-round pick. We don't need it, right? And just imagine if they were able to get that trade done with the Panthers to get Brian Burns. They wouldn't have this year's first-round pick either. So they're synonymous with not having a first-round pick and developing young talent like a Puka Nacua who went in the 5th round, or Kobe Turner in the 3rd, Byron Young in the 3rd round. They've done a really good job of developing their young talent. So this is a team who hasn't had a lot of draft picks like other teams, but they've gotten the most bang out of the buck when it comes to some of those later round draft picks. And this year, they actually have the honor to take somebody in the 1st round and develop them as well.
Yeah, and the thing about Les Snead, though, is that he's been hitting so many home runs with these later round picks. But now he actually has some pressure on this year because you need to not draft a bust. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. They got rid of their coach. They barely missed the playoffs. They went 9-8, tied for the final playoff spot, but lost down a tiebreaker to the Packers, didn't get in. We've seen them get rid of their starting safeties. What do you think their biggest need? Is it out in the secondary? Is it somewhere else? Where are you going, dudes?
I think it's a combination between interior offensive line, safety, and even linebacker. And, Mike McDonald is the new head coach. But when you look at the Seattle roster, kind of like when we're looking at the 49ers roster, I mean, they have some foundational frontline players up and down this roster. 3-headed monster at receiver, 2-headed monster at linebacker, 2 bookend tackles. I think that left guard position and where they pick makes a lot of sense here to really rectify and fill that void. Or even safety. You talked about it, right? Quandre Diggs and Adams have both gone from that team right now. Could they add another safety? Now, teams aren't usually high on taking safeties in the 1st round because of positional value. But, Devon Bullard or Tyler Nubin, makes a lot of sense if you decide to take them in the 1st round, or even a linebacker, which, again, positional value, I'm not sure you take somebody that high. They did sign Tyrell Dodson and also Jerome Baker, but I believe they're both on 1-year deals. So you need somebody that's going to be around for a while. So Cooper makes a lot of sense at the back of the 1st round as well. Or could they also trade back and get some more draft capital and take, multiple players in the 2nd round?
I mean, that seems like a classic Seahawks move where they're just trying to get as many picks as possible. They love piling up the picks. And it's funny that hiring kind of a defensive-minded head coach, how many defensive moves they've made this offseason. I mean, not just in the back half, but we saw them. They re-signed Leonard Williams, Jonathan Hankins. There's just so many. McDonald really focused on the defense. And I think one of the things you mentioned early was the offensive line situation. There's question marks at guard. And so maybe you're picking 16th overall. That feels too early to take a guard, kind of like what you were talking about with safety positional value, where teams kind of hesitate to take a guard that early. So maybe they trade back, try and get a guard there. But it does feel like guard, secondary. Yeah.
Or a guy that I really like, Troy Fontenot, who has some position flexibility, can play tackle and guard. And the crazy thing is, he's already up there, right? He played for the University of Washington in Seattle. So that is kind of the range he most likely is going to go in the draft. I think that makes a lot of sense too. He's athletic enough to stay at tackle, but you have 2 bookend tackles. He'd be a really good guard too, and a plug-and-play guy for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and since they picked 16th overall, they probably wouldn't feel like they're reaching taking him. And I'm sure his agent's calling up like, please take him. We don't want to move. He's happy here.
We don't want to leave. We don't want to leave.
This place is great. All right. And then, of course, we have to talk about the team that doesn't ever get any love because they've been so bad over the past couple years. I don't even know what this team is doing anymore. It's the Arizona Cardinals. What do they? Everything is a need. What's their main need?
I mean, when you look at it, they need a number 1 receiver. They lost Randall Moore and Hollywood Brown, right? So they need a number 1 receiver. I think they just signed Josh Reynolds, if I'm not mistaken, but he's more of a 2/3 type guy. A lot of people have kind of pegged him to take Marvin Harrison Jr., which makes a lot of sense at the number 4 spot. Should it go quarterback, right? Marvin Harrison Jr. would fall into your lap at the number 4 spot. So receiver is big. Edge, they need an edge guy to come off the edge and be consistent. And also they need another corner as well. So like you said, this team has a lot of needs, right? This was a team I think that was picked to finish dead last in regards to Super Bowl odds last year. And the crazy thing is they've actually lost players instead of actually getting better. Now, they got better at the defensive tackle position, right? And I think they signed Jonah Williams, if I'm not mistaken, to play go back to left tackle, right? Because Paris was playing left. He was playing right tackle last year. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works because Jonah Williams was playing right tackle last year for the Bengals. So is he going to go back to left tackle now or will Paris go to left tackle? So like you said, Breach, they have so many issues, but they have so many needs on their team, right? I think Marvin Harrison Jr. makes a lot of sense. And then after that, I would not be surprised if they just go best player available throughout the rest of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that they have so many holes and that, look, Marvin Harrison Jr. seems like an obvious pick, an easy pick, but you also have to consider that, hey, look, we have so many holes. Maybe we trade back to 6 or 7. We try and get Malik Neighbors or another one of these top 3 receivers and just add some picks. Because if you could add another first-round pick, if the Vikings call up and they're desperate and they say, hey, we'll give you our 23rd pick and our 11th pick to move up to 4. I mean, you have to consider it because you have so many holes, like you said. But what were they thinking? They just gave away Rondale Moore to the Falcons for a backup. What are they doing, dudes?
I want to know, like, it's been really weird with Rondale Moore because he has a really good skill set, right? He's not just a, Swiss Army knife where you can maybe give him in around. Like, he can actually play football really well. I think, to me, he could be a high quality, too, if people actually use him the proper way, right? I mean, this guy's lower body strength, Brees, his explosiveness is ridiculous. And it just seems like every coach or coaching regime he's been through in Arizona now, maybe this has something to do with him. I guess they don't see the vision, right? And like you said, they essentially just gave him away in a trade-off with Desmond Ridder to the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons like, shoot, we'll take that skill set all day long, right? Put him in the backfield. We could put him in the slot, even though they did, sign a slot receiver this offseason. But I just don't get why he hasn't been used properly on all the team or in Arizona. Hopefully the Atlanta Falcons use him well.
And that could just be a situation where the Cardinals just don't know what they're doing because you look at Hollywood Brown. He had, I think, 1,000-yard season during his final year with the Ravens. He gets to Arizona, and he doesn't do nothing. He had both seasons went over 500 yards, but he definitely didn't have the production that he had in Baltimore. So it could just be the Cardinals just don't know what they're doing on offense.